You have to see this. Ukraine's victory is approaching. A fierce trap has snapped shut, and the armed forces of Ukraine have broken the enemy on the front into atoms. After such a disgrace, the Russians have lost their minds. This changes everything. Aviation is encircling the enemy, and drones are delivering precise, relentless strikes. The Czech Republic has burst onto the scene with mega weapons from the West that will stun Putin. The dictator is beside himself with rage. He is preparing to attack Europe. The decree is already on the table. But this audacious plan will backfire on Russia itself. All this and more in our episode, The Fiery Point. At this very moment, Donetsk is becoming a fierce battleground. The Russians can't withstand the pressure. The enemy's positions are collapsing. The Ukrainian Armed Forces counteroffensive continues. Our troops are giving Putin's army a real beating, leaving them no way to retreat. Right now, historic battles have begun. Ukrainian defenders have set a course for the total destruction of enemy forces. Where is it hottest right now, and does this not prove the complete failure of all the Kremlin's plans? We'll tell you about it from the front lines in just a moment.
Only 1 out of 10 Russian assault troops reaches Ukrainian positions in the area of Novopavlivka and Dobropilya in the Donetsk region. This is reported by the Institute for the Study of War. Russian forces continue offensive actions in this direction, trying to break through to Pokrovsk before the winter cold sets in.
A representative of the Ukrainian brigade operating in the Pokrovsk direction reported that Russian infantry continues to attack in small assault groups once or twice a day. The increased range of Russian strike drones is expanding the danger zone and complicating Ukrainian logistics. The representative noted that Russian forces in this direction are also experiencing logistical problems, as Russian troops have to deliver supplies on foot in small groups to avoid detection by Ukrainian drones.
In these directions, the occupiers continue to actively assault Ukrainian positions using infiltration tactics.
These are not occupying troops in the traditional sense, but rather small, specialized groups, let's say a necessary contingent of highly trained men. In their swift and aggressive assault raids, they have successfully infiltrated our sovereign territory and, as such, urgently need to be thoroughly cleared out and neutralized. This is a territory that is not completely closed off, which at this stage can also be cleared by us.
The General Staff has long been aware of this tactic and is successfully countering it. Out of 155 combat engagements in the past day, 51 were recorded specifically in the Pokrovsk direction.
It should be noted that at present, the enemy is trying to widely use the tactic of infiltrating small groups into the rear areas of our troops, with their subsequent build-up and development of an offensive in our rear. Andriy Hnativ, Chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine.
And these are the actions of the Ukrainian Burevai Brigade in the Kupiansk direction. Approximately 100 Russian soldiers have been neutralized and dozens of drones have been hit. More than 30 shelters have been destroyed, radio equipment has been disabled, and a heavy flamethrower system TOS-1A, Sontsepyok, has been destroyed. In the Kharkiv region, Ukrainian drones are actively disrupting Russian attacks, which has forced Russian troops to avoid mechanized assaults since August 2025 and to advance mostly on foot. The Ukrainian armed forces are successfully taking advantage of this. Here is a video of a Russian soldier being eliminated in this direction. The occupier is forced to fend off the Ukrainian drone with a log, but it's all in vain. In the Sumy direction, Ukrainian special forces managed to clear out positions that the Russian army had held for a long time. At the scene, they found the phone of the eliminated enemy, Mykola Prusov, who had complained about the lack of supplies and rotations. Meanwhile, in the Dnipropetrovsk region, according to Deep State, the Russians have advanced in Verbov and Berezove. There have also been successes in the area of Novoivanivka in the Zaporizhzhia region. This was also reported by Russian public channels. They write that during the fighting, more than 10 square kilometers of territory came under the occupiers' control. But considering that in the past few days the Ukrainian armed forces have liberated almost 20 times more territory, this temporary success won't last long.
A sensation from the Czech Republic taking the game to another level, the supply and production of weapons for Ukraine is ramping up at full speed. The factories and warehouses of the Allies are forming a powerful logistical corridor because supplies are being sent directly to the front lines. This is a strategic breakthrough that could finally shatter Russia's military power and bring Putin to his knees. Don't miss the first details in the following report.
Ukraine and the Czech Republic are creating their own Ramstein. Our country's goal is to deepen this cooperation by signing an intergovernmental agreement and a support program for affected enterprises. This is an industrial Rammstein, noted Oleksiy Sobolyev, Ukraine's Minister of Economy, Environment and Agriculture.
Not only the Czech defense industry, but also the political leadership of the country at the moment of the so-called Czech initiatives is a key element in providing material and technical support to Ukraine's defense forces.
The Embassy of the Czech Republic in Kyiv reports that the Czech Republic supports Ukraine's democratic transformation and Euro-Atlantic integration, both in the political sphere and through concrete projects and initiatives. For the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic, Ukraine is a priority country for transformation and cooperation, a country of special attention within the framework of Czech development cooperation, and a beneficiary of humanitarian aid.
At the moment, under the Czech initiative, around 2 million artillery shells have already been delivered. This has significantly strengthened the position of Ukraine's defense forces, both in the current situation and in counter-battery warfare, and accordingly has increased their effectiveness against Russian armored vehicles. The Czech side has supplied about 70 T-72 M1 tanks to meet the needs of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. More than 140 combat vehicles, multiple rocket launch systems, and accordingly about 4.5 million rounds of ammunition have also been delivered. This includes artillery shells and rocket projectiles, plus non-lethal weapons.
Under wartime conditions, there are still 220 Czech companies operating in Ukraine. Also, as part of the cooperation, Ukraine plans to provide the Czech Republic with a list of the industrial equipment needed by enterprises that have suffered as a result of military actions.
Damaged armored vehicles are being repaired on the territory, among other equipment. In addition, artillery shells are also being produced. The first type is the Soviet 152mm caliber. In other words, these are the enterprises that remained in the Czech Republic since the time of the Warsaw Pact. And considering that about 70% of the armament in Ukraine is still of Soviet design, this is invaluable assistance from this country.
Within the framework of the Czech initiative, the processes of purchasing and delivering ammunition are being optimized.
The Czech side has supplied Ukraine's defense forces with both airplanes and helicopters, and accordingly has provided aviation components from its own military stockpiles. But at this very moment, the primary and most significant initiative of the Czech Republic is precisely the crucial creation of so-called coalitions. These vital coalitions, in turn, are specifically aimed at substantially enhancing the operational capabilities of Ukraine's brave defense forces in the face of ongoing Russian aggression.
The historical memory of the Czech people remembers well the disaster that Russia can bring to foreign lands. That is why the Czechs support Ukraine, which is now fighting the aggressor, preventing the Russians from seizing not only their own country but also Europe.
And Putin's appetites are growing every minute. A direct course toward Europe and NATO points to all of this. A threat to the entire continent, the dictator has hit rock bottom. Drones are just the beginning. It could get hundreds of times worse. Danger hangs like a black cloud. The Kremlin is picking up a frantic pace. Will the United West be able to stop it in time? We'll find out in just a moment.
The Kremlin is expanding the geography of the war. Europe and NATO are preparing for a possible invasion by the Russian dictator.
We need to do this carefully. Carefully. It absolutely needs to be done.
Drones are increasingly violating the airspace of European countries. Such incidents have been recorded in Denmark, Norway, Romania, and Poland. In this way, the Kremlin is increasing pressure on Europe through hybrid attacks and preparations for a large-scale conflict. Poland remains the primary country at risk. The strike on the 10th of September was a deliberately and carefully planned Russian strategy.
For the Russian Federation, Poland is, damn it, one of the priorities, one of them. I mean, not the only one, but one of them. Why? Because a huge amount of military cargo is transported through Polish territory towards Ukraine to the Ukrainian fronts. And Russia is well aware of this. If this route is closed, then Ukraine is left with its logistics disrupted. In other words, it would be cut off, they'd have to reorganize, and at that moment, some territorial gains could be achieved.
And if Russia invades Poland, it could prepare a force of 150,000 troops to implement the Suwałki corridor scenario.
At the moment, up to 40,000 military personnel have been moved directly to the border with the Republic of Belarus. Similar military actions are being carried out in the territory of the Baltic states as well. In addition, at the moment, a naval component of joint exercises is taking place in the waters of the Baltic Sea.
There are also increasing reports that Russia may attack the Baltic countries. Since the start of the large-scale war in Ukraine, Russian military forces have increased the number of provocations in the Baltic region.
Currently, of course, Russia does not have the resources for a full-scale invasion, as it did in Ukraine. However, our military notes that over the past 8 months, there has indeed been a gradual decrease in the amount of Russian equipment destroyed each month on the front lines. In other words, the graphs keep going lower and lower starting from January, February, specifically for these three types of armaments: air defense systems, tanks, and IFVs. So there's more room here for speculation and interpretation. Why? Either fewer tanks and IFVs are being produced, or they are being produced but hidden somewhere, being stockpiled for some other purposes.
Yesterday, one of the pretexts to start a war was the Estonian city of Narva, which is located in the east of the country. There is only a small river separating it from Russia, from the Kremlin's perspective. Already today, in the narratives of Kremlin propaganda, Narva is portrayed as a city where Russians are actively humiliated by Estonians.
These are roughly 200 to 300 of Gherkin's riflemen who could infiltrate a populated area, for example Narva, and carry out exactly the same scenario there as they did in Crimea, as they did in Donetsk. They seized the post office, the telephone exchange, the telegraph, the city hall, and put on a show with the mayor. And they declare the building to be the headquarters of some people's republic, and then ask Putin to send in troops. The scenario is very familiar.
Only in Russia do they shout from every letter that they don't need a war with Europe and NATO, while the alcoholic ex-president Medvedev insists that Russia has supposedly always come to Europe as a liberator, not as an invader. And also Putin's associate Maria Zakharova has started accusing Ukraine of preparing an anti-Russian provocation. Supposedly, Russian drones are being used in Poland and Romania to push NATO into a war against Russia.
This message came from the Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation. I saw it yesterday. And the message is very funny. Let me explain why it's funny. The Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation is a paper tiger. Actually, it's not even a paper tiger, but more like a paper bear. This organization isn't even respected within the Russian security hierarchy. No one takes them seriously, no one fears them. Not even the rank-and-file local police officers respect their authority. And all that's left for this service is to come up with and generate some random ideas, random conspiracies, just to show that their work is important.
In response to Russia's threat, NATO and EU countries are urgently strengthening their defenses, creating a drone wall, and discussing providing Ukraine with air defense systems to establish a shield. After Russia violated Polish airspace, NATO launched Operation Eastern Guard. Denmark has called up several hundred reservists. The soldiers have been ordered to report in as soon as possible.
At the moment, the redeployment of air units to the territory of Poland and Romania is underway. This is the NATO flank. In addition, there is a redeployment of combined units, NATO countries on the territory of the Baltics. Military naval exercises are being conducted by these countries in the waters of the Baltic Sea. It should be noted that the newest aircraft carriers belong to the United States. At the moment, they are in the territorial waters of Denmark. And this is a serious signal to the Russian Federation. In addition, French Rafale jets, which are capable of carrying nuclear weapons, have been deployed to Poland.
In fact, Russia began threatening NATO as far back as 10 years ago. At that time, Turkey, led by Erdogan, was in the crosshairs. Back in 2015, a Russian bomber violated the country's airspace. According to Turkish authorities, the Russian aircraft did not respond to warnings before it was shot down by an F-16 fighter jet. Now, Putin's strategic goal is the collapse of the collective West and undermining trust among NATO members.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
Hell in the sky above the enemy. Revenge is already on the horizon. Our aviation is reaching a new level. The Swedish Gripen is looking to join the arsenal alongside the F-16 and Mirage. When these machines take to the skies under Ukrainian flags, the power gap will become painful and irreversible. This is not just reinforcement. The aviation potential of the Ukrainian Armed Forces is breaking down the Kremlin's war machine, and every strike brings Putin closer to a resounding defeat. All the details about this are coming up next.
defend more effectively, and attack with better results. The Ukrainian General Staff has confirmed the upcoming transfer of an additional batch of Western fighter jets to the armed forces of Ukraine. In addition, there will be new deliveries of Patriot systems from several allies at once. This fall, Ukraine definitely does not intend to leave Moscow's strikes unanswered.
Obviously, the Air Force's entire fleet will be significantly expanding and our overall capabilities will be steadily increasing. This is important.
The fact that Kyiv is preparing to receive several types of new aircraft at once was shared in a BBC interview by the First Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Lieutenant General Ivan Havrilyuk.
When Havrilyuk was asked when the next deliveries would take place, he replied that once you see them in the skies over Ukraine, then you'll know the answer, said the Deputy Minister. Bravo, that's a very good and correct answer, so that the enemy doesn't understand or know, and so there aren't any expectations here either. That's a clear, normal, pragmatic working position. They'll be in the air carrying out combat missions, and we'll see.
The only thing Havrilyuk revealed was the models of the upcoming reinforcements. So, we're talking about a new batch of F-16S, French Mirage 2000S, and Swedish Gripens.
This is a very effective and extremely powerful fighter aircraft technology, meticulously developed by the innovative Swedish industry, specifically to skillfully counter more powerful and significantly better resourced adversaries.
Analysts explain that given the number of sorties flown by Ukrainian aviation, the issue of maintainability is far from the least important. It is also very important that the hardpoints can accommodate Ukrainian as well as European and American weaponry. After all, supplies to Ukraine are now coming from all over the world, and the Gripen meets these requirements.
Sweden this year has also demonstrated its commitment to aviation and military support, which is not new but rather a consistent policy. At the same time,
in terms of maneuverability, they are a cut above all Soviet aircraft and most Western ones, which will give our pilots a significant advantage when operating directly near the front lines.
The fighter jets are very reliable, very agile, and in some technical characteristics, they're even better than the F-16S we are expecting to receive.
Another addition to Ukraine's Air Force will be the French Mirages. This equipment is already familiar to our pilots and is mainly used for long-range strikes with Scalp and Storm Shadow missiles.
With a payload of 6,900 kilograms, it can carry a variety of weapons, including rockets, bombs, and a large arsenal that can also be used against tanks, so its capabilities are quite broad. At the same time,
these aircraft have also proven themselves well during large-scale operations, analysts say. The point is that French fighters are equipped with an advanced onboard communication system, which allows them to perform missions more effectively as part of a group.
and the ability to display three-dimensional objects on the screen simplifies both attack runs and flying at low altitudes. However, it is important to note that Mirages are specifically designed to operate as part of a team. They exchange information with each other, with ground-based radars, and with AWACS systems.
As a result, in addition to carrying out more effective strikes, Ukraine will also be able to defend itself more efficiently. So, according to President Volodymyr Zelensky, at the end of the summer, Israel provided us with an additional Patriot air defense system. And 2 more systems are already on their way.
A month. We are receiving 2 air defense systems in total. Let's talk more about air defense.
But, as it turns out, the German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius is not against talking about it. He confirmed that it is Berlin that is handling the delivery of air defense systems to Ukraine, in addition to the 3 systems already delivered. However, the main intrigue surrounding the transfer of additional weapons to Ukraine remains the American Tomahawk missiles. The Institute for the Study of War reported that Moscow is already trying to disrupt these deliveries, claiming that in response it could deploy its Oreshnik system in Venezuela. However, according to rumors from Washington, these threats have not affected the White House.
Our forces have managed to deploy a new Ukrainian interceptor drone, the Dozor A1, for operations. Now, Russian Garand drones are afraid to enter Ukrainian airspace. They'll have to fall immediately. These are technologies of such a level that the Russians couldn't even dream of. Engineers have achieved the impossible. What is this next-generation drone and what can it do in aerial combat? We'll tell you in just a moment.
New technologies, new challenges, artificial intelligence, having already conquered advanced gadget users, is now being fully utilized in warfare. Today, hardly any modern drone is produced without this technology. Ukrainians are, of course, among the leading UAV designers. Our developers are already actively testing a new drone interceptor. The Ukrainian company VART is working on implementing an autonomous detection and tracking system in reconnaissance UAVs and FPV drones for interceptor drones based on artificial intelligence.
Individual components of the artificial intelligence system are indeed already being used in the war that Russia has unleashed against Ukraine. Ukraine is defending itself with technologies that allow us to save human resources, especially when we talk about time. Ukraine is defending itself using technological components that make it possible to maximize the efficiency of drones, especially in the final meters of approaching a target when control over the device is already being lost.
It is reported that the drone will be called VART Dozor AODN and is already undergoing its final phase of testing. Its main task will be to destroy Russian strike UAVs, which are also launched daily against peaceful cities in Ukraine.
Geranias, Gerberas, Parvodias and other drones. The largest attack we have seen before involved up to 500 drones.
It has been stated that the Dozor AODN will be able to independently detect and destroy enemy FPV and reconnaissance UAVs, even under electronic warfare conditions. That is, the drone can be used directly on the front line, where there are targets for it literally every minute, since Russia has significantly increased its use of drones recently.
Upon impact, the enemy aircraft or drone is effectively destroyed by its own shrapnel, which completely obliterates the hostile enemy UAV.
However, drone warfare, as they say one-on-one, still allows for the possibility of a miss. No matter how hard artificial intelligence tries, some Russian drones are also equipped with countermeasures. That's why engineers are already working on improving the Dozor AODN.
From military publications, in the future, integration with situational awareness systems is also planned, in particular with the Delta system. If implemented, this will allow a single operator to control a group of 5 to 7 interceptors, creating the concept of the so-called small sky. In the air defense segment, interceptor drones will play a key role.
Russian designers are also trying to catch up with our engineers. One of the enemy's new developments is the BM-35 kamikaze drone. A video of its use in the center of Sumy recently appeared online. Our experts are still studying the characteristics of this UAV. It is not yet known what kind of warhead it can be equipped with. However, the lawnmower engine and propeller drive system indicate that the drone does not fly far and will not be used against military targets. And it was obviously designed specifically to terrorize civilians in frontline cities.
We are fighting against a truly dangerous and incredibly aggressive enemy who absolutely does not value human life at all. And we really need to be very careful about the significant changes that are happening there right now. Similar equipment may exist on the territory of the Russian Federation. Russia can circumvent sanctions to produce prototypes. They cannot circumvent sanctions when it comes to mass production, when we're talking about 10,000 units. They are demonstrating their inability to develop this independently.
The results of the work of Ukrainian experts who studied the remains of the BM-35 on site after its arrival confirm this. As a result, about half of the components are of foreign manufacture.
The drone's design contains at least 41 foreign components, including parts from Switzerland, the USA and Taiwan, while most of the details come from China.
According to analysts, one significant lever of influence on the situation could be the strengthening of US and European sanctions, as well as stricter enforcement of already adopted restrictions. After all, the more Russian loopholes are closed, the fewer drones will end up raining down on Ukrainians, while at the same time, it's important to develop our own technologies so that for every new Russian attack, they receive an adequate response.
That's all I have for now. This was Yadarina Hudskogo with you. Stay tuned for even more hellish updates from the front in our next episode. And in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and hit like. See you soon!